Welcome to O's Across the Pond, the show covering all things Baltimore Orioles, but from a fresh European perspective. Join us for the highs, the lows, the heartbreaks, and everything in between. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just discovering Birdland, this is your home for passionate, across-the-pond Orioles talk. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of O's Across the Pond. Today joining me is Grant from Scotland.
Hi there.
And you may recognise a very special guest. You would have seen it on Masson Sports Network. It's Annie Klaff.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No worries, Annie. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
Sure, of course. I'm happy to.
So we'll just get straight into it. Can you explain to us and the viewers your journey into sports media and how you landed at Masson?
Yeah, so this is actually going to be a funny story for the fans across the pond. But so I went to a boarding school in Pennsylvania called Mercersburg Academy, and I played soccer my whole life growing up. That was my main sport, and I discovered through watching English Premier League that Rebecca Lowe went to the same high school as me. So I got in touch with my school's alumni relations network, and they put me in touch with Rebecca, and she became kind of a mentor for me. And she is actually the reason I wanted to go into sports media altogether, because she said, listen, I go to work every day and it doesn't feel like work because I'm talking about sports. And it is the easiest job in the world because it's doing what I love. And so ever since then, I really wanted to get into sports media. So after talking with her, I kind of carved my entire path with blinders on of wanting to go into sports media. So I was like, okay, Rebecca, what colleges should I even be looking at? And she goes, let me ask my buddy Mike Tirico, what are the best schools for sports broadcasting? And then quickly, he, of course, is a Syracuse grad. So he came back and said, okay, apply to Syracuse. So I did, and I got in and went to Syracuse University for 4 years. Did most of the sports media opportunities you can do there, ACC Network, some of the student television networks there. And then when it came time to graduating from Syracuse, I reached out to Brendan Mortensen, who is now currently my coworker, the summer going into senior year, asking if they had any summer internships. And he said, actually, yeah, we do have an internship opening if you wanted to interview for it. So then I got the internship the summer going into senior year. And that was a lot of fun because I'm from the Northern Virginia area, so not too far from Baltimore at all. My whole dad's side of the family is from Baltimore. So they grew up being Orioles fans. So it kind of just worked out perfectly. And then I graduated and they had a full-time opportunity, and here I am.
Excellent. And were you into the Orioles growing up, or not really?
I was, just because of the family connection. I actually grew up going to more Nationals games because it was closer to home than Orioles games. But when I got the opportunity with the Orioles and the Nationals, so to speak, with Masson, I was like, this is the best of both worlds.
And we're not hopefully your executives at Masson don't listen, but is there another sport that you'd want to cover, or a dream job in broadcasting that you would have?
Yeah, I'd say soccer is definitely up there. I've realized that people from the UK probably don't want an American talking about soccer if they call it soccer. So that's kind of shifted a little bit in my mind because I probably won't have the chance to report on Premier League. But I think aside from that, NFL would be a ton of fun. I also am really interested in golf. I think that would be an amazing sport to report on as well.
Ticking all the boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with soccer, you've got the World Cup coming off, in the not too distant future. So maybe that could be an avenue for you. I mean, in the UK, we do have we do tend to see now a lot of American sports broadcasters come over and discuss football and soccer. So it could be an avenue for you there, Harry. So
yeah.
I think we're aware of speaking about baseball in a UK accents that it doesn't quite read the same, does it?
Yeah, it's so funny. It must be the same for when I call it soccer.
So onto baseball and the Orioles. So you've spent a lot of time around the Orioles this season. What's something that fans don't see behind the scenes?
I think that the season is very unique, obviously, because of the expectations that were set going into the 2025 season. And I know that this Orioles fan base is very, very passionate. They take a lot of pride in being an Orioles fan, but they also are the first to be the first critics with the team. So it's very kind of a tale of two halves there, where you have a fan base that is so proud in being an Orioles fan, but at the same time, we'll be quick to jump the gun when there's some kind of critique to be made. I think it's easy to forget that there is so much raw talent on this team, despite the outcome that has come out of 2025 so far. So I would say that the biggest thing that is behind the scenes is just how much talent that there is, and it's easy to forget that there is still a slight chance that there can come back. It's different now when you set the expectations for how it can end at this point in time in the season with the record and everything. But one thing about this clubhouse that you can just feel is their energy and their liveliness, especially when guys like Colton Cowser, Jordan Westburg come back from the injured list. It really just kicks it into gear with their mentality and morale of getting those kind of guys back. But they say all the time that the clubhouse morale has never changed, regardless of win, loss, who's going down to injury, which is true. You can tell that in the clubhouse as well, of how confident they are in themselves, even with whatever outcome. But I do think that when a guy comes back from the IL, you could see it last night with Jordan Westburg too. It's just like a whole new type of ball game, no pun intended, and a whole type of life that comes back into the club that you can't really see from the fan point of view.
Just as you're talking about the mood in the clubhouse, what was the mood like, obviously, with Brandon Hyde losing his job, and how has the mood changed, or has there been a change? I know you've said that it's been positive throughout, but just look at maybe at the start of the season and that run that ultimately, regardless of whether people think Brandon Hyde should have lost his job or not, I don't think he should have. I think the blame is higher up than that, but the fact is he's lost his job. What was the mood before he lost his job, and how has it changed?
Right. I think it's hard to keep a high mood and high energy when such a big shift and change happens like that one, especially like I mentioned with the expectations in 2020, ending 2024 and going into the 2025 season. I, for one, would never have expected, if you had told me in the off season, that Brandon Hyde would have been dismissed and that they would have gone on this kind of record and this path at this point in time. But I think that with the players at first, it was definitely, you heard from some of the guys be like, okay, because that we had been playing so poorly, it cost somebody his job. And that's never something good to see and good to feel that way. But I think at the same time, they know that it's the business. They know that it's baseball, and that's the world of the sport, and being a professional athlete, that things like that can happen at the cost of how they're succeeding or not. So I know that they all kept it very professional. At the same time, they know that they had confidence in Tony Mansolino. You heard a lot of the guys like Dean Kramer say how confident they are in Tony Mansolino to take on this role. One thing that Manso said afterwards is, look, this isn't a good thing. I'm not happy about this kind of promotion because it comes at the cost of my friend and former manager, Brandon Hyde. But all I can do now is kind of try and change the trajectory of the team. And you can, I don't want to say that it's because of the dismissal of Brandon Hyde now that it's changed a little bit, but the change and maybe like a spark in the players has maybe brought in some kind of new energy. But Brandon Hyde was a phenomenal manager. He brought this team back from almost nothing to being manager of the year in 2023. So all credit to him, and any player that you see and ask will also say the same thing.
And just on that turnaround, because I think we have seen a turnaround. Certainly the last few weeks we've been playing comfortably above 600 baseball, which is what they need to do. We've also seen John Maybury come in do you think, has there been suggestions that has been a spark, or is that just one part of the puzzle?
I think it might just be one part of the puzzle. I don't know if you can completely credit it to just the management changes and coaching staff changes, because I think people often forget also that baseball is a momentum sport. And once you get going, you can really keep going. And that's why they call it getting hot for a reason. And I think that all it took was just a streak. And in the start of June, and that away stretch where they won 4 of 6 was really huge for this team. It also helps when you get guys like Zach Eflin back. He was one of the biggest injuries to date of this season, and you get him back. He might not have had the most quality starts and characteristic ones out of him, but he definitely has come back since that. And then, of course, just getting some other guys like Jordan Westberg, Colton Cowser back. I mentioned Cedric Mullins. It's really huge and pivotal to get guys that were intended to be in the everyday lineup back. So I think it's a whole bunch of things, just getting the mojo and energy back and having players back from injury, getting some kind of run and some kind of streak just changes the whole perspective and how a team acts and reacts to things.
As you said there about getting on a roll and getting on a streak, a player who has struggled for nearly 12 months now, but we've seen turn him around. He's 12 for 31 at the moment. Going into Seattle last week, Adley Rutschman, do you think he's beginning to put his struggles behind him? And what would the reason for that be?
Yeah, I definitely think that he's kind of got his confidence back a little bit. And you know that all season his underlying metrics looked really, really good. And it was kind of confusing as to why the results weren't coming through. His whole StatCast page is pretty much in the red. So it was like, why is his batting average and why is everything so much lower than we expected it to be, especially with how good he looked in spring training. But you're right. You mentioned the most recent appearances from him. He's looked really good. I think keeping him in the number 2 spot in the lineup was huge, because not only did he have faith in him from his coaches and Tony Mansolino, he knew that he was getting backed up there. The underlying metrics, like I mentioned, it was bound to translate eventually. And I think that we're seeing that right now. And also just getting some guys back too. It really just makes it more of a holistic lineup to where, okay, he gets on base after batting second, then we know that the rest of the lineup is complete as well to be able to bring some guys in. And we saw that last night too.
Yeah. And we've just got some kind of other more fun questions in terms of traveling with Masson. What's your favorite ballpark outside of Camden Yards to visit, and why?
I'm going to give a disappointing answer to this one. I actually do not travel, which is a bummer. And I also have only been to 2 ballparks out of all MLB ballparks. So that is quite a shame, and I have to change that. So I'm really hoping to one day, just even if I'm not traveling with the team, just go seek out some other ballparks. I really, really want to go to Oracle Park. I think that would be awesome. And Wrigley Field, of course, that's a bucket list item for every baseball fan. But yeah.
I've got that coming up in September, hopefully.
So I think it's fair to say you're a bit younger than ourselves, as well as a lot of Masson viewers. My perspective is a lot of young people are into sports, but they tend to watch highlights and clips, check stats, and play fantasy sports rather than sit and watch a game on TV for 2 hours. Is that a fair assessment? And is watching/broadcasting sports going to change dramatically as a result?
I'm not sure if it will change dramatically. I know that obviously baseball is known as America's pastime, and a sport that was very traditionally an American sport to watch. And I think that baseball, with it being a lot less high energy than football or basketball or something like that, and it taking a lot longer, makes it a little bit trickier. But I think when you bring changes in, like the pitch clock and everything to make the game faster, it does help. I wouldn't necessarily say that from at least my age group, it feels like it's dying, because it does not at all. I think like a lot of my friends my age and whatnot will sit through and watch a game. I do think that you are correct in terms of attention span, where watching highlights and scrolling through TikTok or Instagram Reels and Twitter or X for that matter, is definitely characteristic to the younger generations, where the attention span is so low. So you just have to give it a quick scroll and find out all that you need. But I don't necessarily think that because of that, fewer people are watching the game, at least from my experience.
Okay. And just staying on the kind of broadcaster theme, do you think that broadcasters, especially like home team broadcasters, do you think they kind of have more of an obligation to ask tough questions and be critical of the team, the coaches, the front office? It seems to be that there's a lot of, you know, kind of friendly arrangements there. Do you feel you could, or not you in general, but just and the industry in general could be more critical at times?
I don't know about more critical, but what I've noticed just from the home broadcasters is that they do have really strong relationships with all of the players and the coaches, just because they are there all the time. So I would just say that it helps with them to be able to build those connections and those relationships by being there every single day, games 1 through 162. Yeah. And it's definitely an advantage in that sense. But I think it's the same as any other broadcasters too, where they're trying to remain professional and unbiased and everything, where your main job is to report on the team and report on the outcomes of the games, and they do a fabulous job of that.
Excellent.
So we've got some quick-fire questions for you. Ideally, one-word answers, no nuances allowed. And
oh, gosh.
We won't hold you to them, other than obviously posting them on Internet X and TikTok and trying to make you go viral for either the right reason or wrong reason. So the first one, do the O's make the postseason this year?
I'm going to say yes, because I don't know if I can use more than one word, but I'll give some reasoning. I'm an optimistic person, and I think that if they continue with this path, then there is a chance. I think we've seen weirder things in the world of sports. There also isn't that much historical reference right now with the wild card setup to be able to say, okay, this team was this many games under 500. They're never going to make it, because that hasn't necessarily happened for that long with this wild card setup. So you never know, but I am an optimist in that sense.
Okay. Will Adley Rutschman play in another All-Star game?
You guys are giving me the hard-hitting questions.
Designed for that, yep.
I think it's tough with the way that he started the season.
Not this year, just in general.
In general? Okay.
Yeah.
Not
this year.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. This year might be tricky, but
I think
yes,
so.
In the future.
Will the O's play in a World Series before Gunnar Henderson reaches free agency in 2029?
Yes, because this team's talent is so good. And once you get Basayo up to the big leagues as well, Enrique Bradfield Jr., those are two guys that will definitely be able to make a difference, regardless of maybe who leaves at the trade deadline and who doesn't, what even happens at the trade deadline. I think that when you get those two guys, to name a few, there is a chance, especially by the time he reaches free agency.
Okay. Do the Orioles sign someone to a deal of $200 million or more this offseason?
Can I say maybe?
Oh, do you know something that we don't know?
No, I do not. I definitely do not. But I think with this past offseason as an example, it's hard to tell, because you did see the front office offer a good amount of money to Corbin Burns. It was not the exact timing or yearly deal that Burns was looking for. It also helped that his family was in Arizona, so couldn't really compete with that. But I think that when we saw the number of what was offered to Burns, it was like, okay, wow, this Orioles front office is actually willing to spend a lot of money. They spent the most money that they have under the Elias era, and it's definitely changing for this front office with Rubenstein.
Will Cedric Mullins still be a Baltimore Oriole on the last day of the regular season?
Oh my gosh. Um, I'm gonna say it all depends, because it all depends on how the rest of the season goes until the trade deadline, because it can be up until the trade deadline, where the Orioles decide if they're buyers, if they're sellers, if they're a little bit of both, which I very well think that they could be a little bit of both. I don't think you have to rebuild by all means. It just will maybe take a little bit of retooling. You might not have to give up your expiring contracts and your very seasoned veterans like Cedric Mullins. You might not have to do that by the time if they keep winning like this. But there's definitely still a lot of work to do. It's a long season and still a long way to go until July 31st.
Okay, so another tough question. Does Heston Kjerstad make it?
Make it back to the big league?
Make it as in have a big career for us.
I think he does. I mean, we've seen flashes of his talent, and the bat has just so much raw power that it just can't not. This season was very difficult because he was given the opportunity to be that everyday outfielder, and the bat didn't necessarily translate as much as the team would have wanted to. I do know that there's still a lot of confidence in Kjerstad from this Orioles organization, and with himself too. Self-confidence is huge. But I do think he just needs a little bit of a reset going back down to AAA. There's got to be some work on defense. I think everybody knows that. There's no surprise there that it got to a point where there were some better options, especially with Mullins and Cowser coming back. And Laureano and Dylan Carlson have been playing really well this season too in defense. So I do think that he will make it. He just needs a little bit of a reset right now, and that's what they're doing.
Two parts to this one, Annie. Will the O's have more than one All-Star in 2025? And if so, name who you think they are.
I'm going to say one for sure. I think Jackson Holliday could be one. I think Ryan O'Hearn would be the second if he does. He came out the gates looking really good. March and April and May looked phenomenal. June has not been as good for him, but it's still not even halfway through June. So I think that if there are two, which I do think that there are going to be two, it's going to actually I'm going to stick with one, but it's going to be either O'Hearn or Jackson Holliday.
Yeah,
leaning more towards Ryan O'Hearn actually, if he picks things back up in June.
And will Samuel Basayo be on the opening day roster next season?
Yes. I also think that he is going to come up before the end of this season. Yeah. And I really hope that he does, because I am so excited to see how he is as a big leaguer. There's still a lot of work to do in AAA, but right now he looks really good. And I don't think it'll be long before there's nothing left to prove for him in AAA.
Yeah, we are really big fans of what Samuel Basayo does and what the potential he has. Another one, will Dylan Beavers be on the opening day roster next year?
I also think that he looks really good in AAA right now. I think that if he makes his first big league stint this season, which I think we could see him towards the end of this season, I won't be surprised if the first stint isn't that impressive, because we've seen from a lot of Orioles prospects over the years struggle in their first big league stints. So I think that with that, he will have to prove a lot in spring training again next year to make the opening day roster. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does.
Does Tony Mansolino get the Orioles job on a permanent basis?
I think that will be tricky. I know I'm answering these in a lot more words than just one answers, but I think it'll be tricky just given how young and inexperienced the coaching staff is at the moment. I think regardless of the outcome of the season, whatever Tony Mansolino does so far looks really good, but there's still going to be a lot to prove, just it being his first time as a big league manager. And I'm not sure if going into next season, the Orioles front office are going to be willing to kind of make that same call of, okay, we have to stick with Tony Mansolino given what he did with the Orioles after the big adjustment last season, or if we're going to make a whole nother decision to go a different direction with someone that we know has had X years of experience as a major league coach or major league manager.
And the big one that everybody wants to know, will Mike Elias still be the general manager this time next year?
I think he will. I think similarly to Brandon Hyde, Elias did a lot with this team to bring it back from basically ground zero. And when you look at Elias and his experience as a major league executive, I think that it is huge what he's done, especially for this Orioles team, basically transforming the entire farm system. He's been excellent at drafting players, and just has been really, really good for this team despite the outcome of this season right now. I would be surprised if he were let go.
Yeah. Okay. You'd be glad to know that's the quickfire questions over. Thank you.
Okay. Phew.
So we'll maybe move on to maybe talking about the prospects. And is there any names that are on your radar that maybe are not on ours or are not on the forefront of getting called up in the next few months or next season?
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say you'd be getting called up anytime soon, but in AA, Braxton Bragg has looked incredible. Yeah. Brendan and I went down to Chesapeake not long ago and had some conversations with Brendan. Talked to Braxton, and then I spoke with Enrique and Levi Wells. Levi has also looked really good. His numbers in AA. On the AAA forefront, obviously Basayo, Beavers would probably be the next two that we could see. I am actually going down to Norfolk in a couple of weeks to see some of these guys, which I'm really looking forward to. I've never been down to see a Tides game, so that'll be really exciting. But hoping to speak with Cameron Weston, see what he's all about, because he's one of the top prospects in the organization right now. But I would say that there isn't, I feel like the people that are on the radar right now are as advertised. Aside from Braxton, I feel like he's going to get a lot more attention as of late.
Let's hope so.
With Samuel Basayo, obviously, if he comes up this season, where do you see him fitting in? Obviously, you've got Kobe Mayo, who was going to be playing first base pretty much every day now. You've got Gary Sanchez coming back. You've got Adley Rushman, behind the plate. Are the O's going to try and carry three catchers if they bring Basayo up? Where do you think he fits in?
I think if Basayo does come up, we wouldn't necessarily see him get a lot of playing time, regardless. But it would be kind of just like okay, let's just see what he's got. And I think that it was the same thing with Kobe Mayo, Jackson Holiday, where they came up in dire circumstances, but didn't necessarily get as many at-bats opportunities as they needed to be able to prove themselves. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the same thing with Basayo, but there is a reason that they are carving a pathway for him at first base. There's a reason why they've been having him get a lot of reps to kind of enhance his defensive versatility, because they know that Adley is there and Gary Sanchez was brought in as backup catcher. I think that if Basayo does come up and prove himself behind the dish, and at the plate offensively, then I wouldn't be surprised if we see him getting some catching opportunities ahead of Gary Sanchez. I know Gary is coming back from injury, and he is a very, very seasoned veteran at this point. It just depends on if he'll be able to bring his bat in to translate, which we haven't seen yet so far this season.
Okay, excellent. And then just in terms of your own working things, what's your kind of next few days or over the weekend? What are you working on or covering for the Orioles or Masson?
Yes. So yesterday I was on Utah Street before the game, asking fans which Orioles they voted for to send to the All-Star game.
I need to do that.
So today I am working on editing that and then sending it to the producers, posting it on social media. So hopefully that turns out okay. I got some fans. I forced one person to do it on camera with me to vote on camera, but so that's today. Earlier this morning, I'm going to be editing that. I am off tomorrow, luckily, but I am going to be at the ballpark Saturday, Sunday, working a social media shift. So that'll be fun. My office is right in Camden Yards, in the warehouse, right past first base. So it's a really great view, and it is probably one of the best office views and I know I'm biased, but it's probably one of the best office views to exist. So I'm excited to get in there.
I don't think we would argue with you on that.
Yeah, not at all. Just before we wrap up, Annie, how do you see tonight's game going? Obviously, going up against Tarek Skubal, and I bet I was just saying to Grant before we came on air. Before last night's game, I was looking at bullpen rest and how many were rested, how many days rest he'd had, and I don't know whether there's a kind of a plan whether they're going to try and utilise that bullpen tonight against Skubal. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be probably the hardest game of the season, just because how dominant and elite Skubal is. It also is going to be tricky because of the Orioles' struggles against left-handed pitchers this season. So we're going to need a lot because of it's such a lefty-heavy lineup for the Orioles. They're really going to need to kick it into high gear. I know we saw from Gunnar not just a couple of nights ago where he played really well against Brant Herter. So I think that is a good sign. They just need to be able to carry the momentum in from last night, but there is no surprise that it's going to be a very, very tough challenge against Tarek.
Have you got anything else to add, Grant? Or
I think it's just the hitting against lefties is continues to be the thing that we don't look like we've really turned around, and there is a concern there that it's very easy to play against us if you were really needing to win one game. So I don't know what they can do mid-season without getting new players in. Yeah,
it's definitely been one of the largest issues. That and scoring with runners in scoring position are the two downfalls to this offense this season. And I think that once you get Tyler O'Neill back as well from the IL, I know, and Gary Sanchez too, for that matter, I know that they haven't put up good numbers this season, but they've each had their own nagging injuries, and they are meant to be lefty mashers, especially Tyler O'Neill. So I think that they could make a big difference. I also think Jordan Westberg, of course, is going to make a big difference. He has reverse splits, but regardless, he had an almost 800 OPS against lefty pitchers last season, which is something that this ball club needs. Ramon Arias, I always think that he flies under the radar. He is a sneaky good player on offense and defense.
Definitely.
And we saw that last night as well, too. So I think that there could be some turnaround once you just get some guys back. At the end of the day, though, against Skubal, if you get one win, if you don't get swept by the Tigers, I do think that is still a good thing because they're one of the best teams in baseball right now.
Yeah, I think the weekend games against the Angels are going to be huge as well because they've just swept the Athletics, and obviously we saw the struggles that we had out in Sacramento or wherever the Athletics call home at the moment. But yeah, so it's going to be huge. I think you've just got to go into each week now and go, if we can only drop one game in one series and then win the next series, and you just got to try and progress like that and just keep on a roll.
Right.
So
yeah, 100%.
Well, Annie, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. We love watching you on the air when you're on Masson and love the work that you do. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I ask how you guys became Orioles fans?
Yeah, you can do. Do you want to go first, Grant?
Yeah, so I have some friends from Scotland who are into baseball, and most of them are actually Yankees fans. And just being a contrarian, they were trying to get me in, and they knew I would love sport, and they knew I would get into it. And I randomly just picked the Orioles. I think because I was planning to watch The Wire and knew that it was set in Baltimore. So I just kind of stuck with it. This was about 10 years ago. And
that's awesome.
Been hooked ever since.
And for me, I was so in 2010, I was in the Royal Navy, and we were deployed to America, and we docked in Fells Point for 2 weeks in the May of 2010. And at the time, the Orioles were playing the Athletics and Angels in back-to-back home series. So we got invited down by at the time, I think it was the Angelos family sorted something out for us to go down and watch the O's beat the Athletics. It was the only win that week, so it was. I think from then on I was hooked, and since then I've got try and get back across to Baltimore every year. I was there in 2023. I didn't manage to get across last year, but yeah, no, I love it, and it's like a home from. I think Baltimore and Liverpool are very similar cities.
Yeah, I've actually never been to Liverpool, but I would picture the exact same thing, like kind of blue collar a little bit, lots of pride in their sports teams. So that's a really cool comparison.
Yeah, and well, if the MLB come back next year and whoever comes over, you might have to come over.
Yeah.
I'll take you to the Cavern Club and you can listen to some Beatles music in Liverpool.
Yeah, that would be so fun. So are you guys making it to a game at all this season?
Yeah, I'm coming out in September and I'm going to 2 games against the Yankees, and then we're going to fly to Chicago and get a few games in, 1 game at the White Sox, 1 game at the Cubs, and then get back over. We've all got young families, so we can't quite expand to a longer trip than a week. So that's my plans in September, which I'm really look forward to now. It's going to come up really quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
At the moment, I haven't got any plans, but I am one of the other hosts, Andrew. He is out next month, July 24th, I think he's out. So I might book on a last-minute trip and come out. I think we're planning with the idea of recording something out there, a pod, I don't know. And I might try and get out in September for the Yankees series. And the one thing I have got planned is I will be in Sarasota for spring training for 2, maybe 3 weeks.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. It's an exciting time. It was my first spring training this past spring, so it was very cool to experience and see how many Orioles fans come out there too.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, so that's the plan next year. Try and get out there and just try and carry on growing the podcast and our message. Like we were wary when we were setting this up about a couple of plucky Brits talking about America's favourite pastime, but the feedback we've had, people seem to love it, and we like to think we know our stuff. You may tell us different, but
no, you do. You definitely do.
But yeah, as I said before, Annie, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule. I understand that it's not early morning there, but it's in the morning,
No.
and I hope we haven't disturbed your pancakes and waffles or whatever you have for your breakfast.
No,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye
thank you so much. It was an awesome time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of O's Across the Pond, bringing Birdland to Europe 1 episode at a time. Be sure to subscribe, share and follow along as we keep the Orioles conversation going from this side of the Atlantic. Until next time, stay loud, stay proud and let's go O's.